Hello, Tungsten Miner here. Today I'm going to talk about Forge Microblocks or Multiblocks or Multipart or whatever you want to call them. This all begins by making yourself a saw, and you can make a saw with these stone rods, the recipe for which is just any chunk of stone or cobblestone, one on top of the other, just like making sticks, and you get 4 of these stone rods. You then take some regular sticks and some kind of material. Now, here I've got some flint, but here I've got some iron, and here I've got some diamond. You can use any of the three, flint, iron, diamond, and they'll produce saws which have increasing durability, because of course as you use the saw, it gets worn down. So let's take a look at that. Over here, I've got a saw set up in a Tinker's Construct crafting station with some oak planks inside there with it. And you can see if I were to claim my crafted item, I'd wind up with oak planks slabs. So let me just start with one of these guys. And now I get one of these turned into 2 of those, which makes sense, right? I'm cutting it in half. So I cut it in half. I'm going to put one back in there just underneath the saw. And you can see the saw has lost a teeny tiny little fraction of its durability. If I were using a flint saw, you'd see it loses a bit more. So I can now take this piece and cut it in half and get these oak panels. And I can take one of those and cut it in half and get an oak cover. And I can take this and, well, you can't cut them in half anymore. That's as far as they go. So you go from full-size block to slab to panel to cover. Now, if I were to take this cover and instead of putting it directly underneath the saw, putting it next to the saw on the right, and that actually does matter, I can get a strip. And if I take my planks panel and put it to the right, I can get a post. And if I take my slab and put it to the right, I can get a pillar. And if I take these guys and put them underneath, well, that's already the thinnest one, so it doesn't do anything. But if I were to take this guy and put it underneath, it's going to get me strips. So I can take any piece and cut it in half up and down again, so long as it's not the smallest piece, and get the next smallest piece like that. If I were to put this off to the right, I'm going to cut the post in half there, and instead I'll wind up with a corner. And I can do the same thing for this guy, and I wind up with a nook. And I can do the same thing for this guy, and I wind up with a notch. So those are the combinations of blocks that you can get here. Let's take a look at all of them laid out in front of us. So here's our main block. If I cut that in half by putting the block underneath, I'm going to get a slab. Underneath I get a panel. Underneath I get a cover. But from here, if I put it to the right, I get a pillar. Underneath I get a post. Or if I started with a panel and put it to the right, I'd get a post. And so on and so on. So any of these combinations will work, of underneath and to the right. Now, you can place each of these blocks in slightly different positions on whatever block you've got. And you can see which pieces or places are available just by taking your block and pointing it at the ground. And you can see I've got this interesting shape where it's got 4 corners and a center. So if I'm pointing at the center, you can see it's going to lie flat, like that slab is lying flat. If I want it to stand up, I need to poke it at the side there. And if I want it facing on the other side, I poke it at that side there. And as I move my cursor around, you can see it jumps from place to place or down. I can also place it on the top. So if I am pointing at the top of this thing, you can see it's going to add it to that block. But if I hold down Shift, it's going to place it on the top of that 1 meter cube. Now, different ones of the microblocks can be placed in different patterns. These guys, I've got one on either side of that 1 meter. Here I've got them turned the other way, and here I've got them one on top of the other. And remember, I placed this one by holding down Shift and clicking in the middle there. These are my pillars, and I've placed these 2 standing kitty corner from each other. Same thing with these, except one on top and one on bottom. Same thing here, except one sideways and one the other way. And then this one's a little different in that it's right in the middle. So if I take a post, I can put it on the corner by poking at the corner there. I can lie it flat on its side by lying there. I can do the same as I go all the way around the edges. But if I put it in the middle, it's going to stand up with its long ways up. Over here, I've got some corners, and the nooks work the same way, where basically you can put them in each of the corners of that 1 meter block. So for example, if I take my nooks, I can have a choice of each of those corners. And if I place one and then hold down Shift, it's going to move it to the top of that block. So every one of the pieces has a slightly different pattern of places that you can put it in. Now what I can't do is put something in the middle here. Right? I can click all I like and nothing is going down. So once you've got something in this case, the corner, you can't put something else in the corner also. The next thing I want to talk about is that you can actually stack these items on each other and make them bigger. So here I've got just a plain cover. Here I've got two covers stacked on top of each other. I literally made this by taking a cover and then plopping something else down on top of it. Same exact thing, cover on cover. And that actually turns it into a panel. So in survival, if I were to break this, I'd get a panel back again, not two covers. Here I've got three of them stacked on top of each other. 1, 2, 3. Here I've got 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So you can actually get all the way back up to the height of a regular block. But you can see as I look at this very carefully, it doesn't actually convert it back into a full Oakwood planks block. It still remembers that it's a cover. And you'll get anything that's a cover's worth away, so anything that's an odd number, so 7, 5, 3, and 1, all say cover. Panel, slab, because this is halfway. Panel again, because this is 3 panels thick, and so it calls it a panel. And then this is a cover because it's 7 plus 1 cover. I'm not entirely sure, but probably it didn't want to, the mod maker didn't want to have this go all the way back to the full block just by stacking them up. Anyway, next up, you saw before how you can place multiple blocks in the same 1 meter. Well, here's an example where I've taken 5 covers and 1 glass cover, so 5 Oakwood planks covers and 1 glass cover, and I've put them all in the sides of this same 1 meter cube. So you can see as I point at the ground, the outline shows all of these are full 1 meter pieces. So that's one example. Here's an example where I've taken oakwood planks on the top, glass on the sides, sprucewood planks on the opposite sides. Here's an example. I made a little table by taking some strips and making legs out of them. And then within the same 1 meter, I've put oakwood cover to make the tabletop. Here's a case where I've taken those notches and I've put down alternating spruce and wood notches to fill up the 1 meter. So now I've got a little checkerboard pattern. And here's a case where I've taken strips and pillars, where I put the strips in the corner pieces and I put the pillar in the center. Make this funny looking shape. Here's a case where I've had 2 pieces or 2 different kinds of materials making up the entirety of the 1 meter block, but at different intervals. So here I've got covers, covers, covers all the way, covers, 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 except I've got a spruce cover, 1 at the top. Here I've got 2, which turned itself into a panel, plus 3 panels underneath. Covers and panels, all the way down. So you can make a full 1 meter block that's divided up between 2 patterns, however much you want on each pattern. Now I've got some panels here, and let me show you how I made that, because it is a little tricky. So I'm going to put spruce on one side and oak on the other. And now if I want to make some block that's partly one and partly the other, let's say I want 3 oakwood planks and I want 5 sprucewood planks. I need to point at the middle on the inside of this 1 meter cube. So I've got 1 already, 2, 3. Now I switch to spruce and I need to point to the opposite side. So you see how when I point it over here I get nothing, and I can click and it doesn't do anything. But when I point over here you can see that vague kind of almost transparent outline of a spruce wood planks cover that will get added. That's because I'm already pointing at one of the same thing. And so it knows to make it thicker and add on a layer. So that's 2, 3, 4, and then if I aim just right, 5. And so now I've got 3 and 5 of the different kinds of panel covers. This demonstrates that panels and slabs and things aren't the only things that count. So here I've taken some redwood torches and some regular torches and combined them with slabs of glass and with wood to make a kind of little hollow spot in here, which has all of these different things going on. It's also interesting to note that the player can fit inside something that's got covers on all sides too. Not true with panels, so this is a little cozy, and you can't make it any more narrow than that. But you also notice that Microblocks allows you to have multiple torches, and even torches of different kinds, at least on different surfaces. I can in fact put 4 torches in a block, but I couldn't do that if I also have the cover. So in this case, when we look down here, we see the top side there is occupied by a torch, the left side is occupied by a glass cover, and the right side by an oak wood planks cover, and the bottom side by another torch. Next is this little bathtub. So one of the most favorite things of mine about Microblocks is that it allows you to make much more realistic looking structures at the scale of the player. Now, of course, if I were making something that was many times larger than actual size in Minecraft, you can add a lot of detail because, of course, your 1 meter by 1 meter blocks, you can say, I'm going to make that 10 centimeters or 1 centimeter or whatever you want instead of 1 meter. Well, with Microblocks, you can do that while staying at the player's scale. So here I've made a little bathtub by taking quartz covers and using this trick that we were talking about here, so that I've got 7 covers worth of stone plus 1 cover's worth of quartz. So that's actually a bunch of stone covers, not actually a stone block. That's a stone block, a quartz block on the bottom of the tub because whatever, it doesn't matter what's down there. And then here I've got just the cover. And to hide the seams, I've got quartz strips and a quartz nook at the top here to cover everything up. Because if we look down there, we can see I couldn't fit a nook in there. You can't have a nook in a corner and then have everything else filled in with some other pattern. So here I've just got a quartz nook that I stuff in the corners to hide the little gap there. And now if I fill this with water, the important thing is that is part of the next meter over. This right here is a full meter, so I can put water in there and it works. That's a full meter, that's a full meter, and that's a full meter. So I've got 3 by 3 completely filled meters plus this block over here, which gives the illusion of having a nice white porcelain boundary around the tub area. And then the regular background everywhere else. So get rid of this stuff. Over here, this is a demonstration of using strips, just plain strips, and nooks, just as little anchors there, to make a guardrail around a dangerous area. So in this case, that goes all the way down to the void. And what I've done is I've made the nook inside this meter down here, so it's at the level of that stone block. And then this is at the level of the ground, so basically as though it were sticking straight up from the ground. And then all of these strips that make up the handrail are in the next meter taller, right? So if I grab myself some grass blocks, you can see this guy here is actually at the level of this 2nd meter tall. It doesn't fit in this 1 meter down here. And that's important because the player can, with certain kind of boots or potion effects or whatever, high step over top of things that are 1 meter tall. I happen not to have them at the moment, but that could be dangerous if I did. This makes it so that it's just barely taller than 1 meter, and I won't therefore walk over it, even if I have high step. Over here, these look like ordinary strips and nooks, but in fact, these two are glowstone nooks. So in Microblocks, any block that sheds light will continue to shed light, even if you've chopped it up into little bitty pieces. So these are actually kind of like tiki torches with a little tiny dab of glowstone at the top. Now remember, when you cut something in half, you get 2 of them. So if you cut it in half once, twice, 3 times, you're doubling, doubling, doubling each time. So in actual fact, if you take a block of glowstone and chop it up into nooks, you get 32 nooks for every piece of glowstone. So you can stretch it a lot further and get a lot more light out of it than you would if you just use the glowstone straight up. Next, let's talk about some home decoration kinds of things. So here's an example of a nice door frame. And you can see, just like with the pool demonstration, this is a cover, and this is 7 covers. So I've got 7 bricks covers plus 1 oak wood planks cover, which allows me to save this whole 1 meter for the door, because obviously I couldn't put a door down if there wasn't enough space for it. And then I've got some strips and a nook to give a nice boundary. And you can see again here how you can't quite fill in that corner with a regular strip. So I've got a cover at the top, 7 covers of bricks here, 7 covers of bricks. And I deliberately left the strips and nooks off on the backside so we can see exactly what's going on. But this allows you to have a nice 1 meter by 2 meters space for a door to fit into, while still looking like you've got some nice wood trim around that opening. Next, here, sometimes you find yourself with an even number of blocks. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 blocks wide, but I want my door to be centered and I don't want it to be 2 meters wide. Well, here's your option. You can take some brick slabs, put them next to your regular brick wall, and that gives you an opening which is itself 1 meter wide, but is centered across that boundary between the 2 adjacent blocks. Now, unfortunately, you can't put a door here because the door is going to insist upon being inside 1 meter block, but you can at least get that same impression. Now, if you don't mind splitting things, here I've got a opening that has a 1 meter center, but it has a half a meter on either side. So my arch here is 2 meters wide, but still centered on a 1 meter block. This is a little section of a house made entirely out of microblocks, well, almost entirely. So if we look around the back side here, we can see actually this brick doesn't go all the way through. It's just a brick cover. The inside of the room is this green wool. The window is made out of spruce and then just regular glass panes. And when I go to another room, unfortunately, you can see in order to have this room land on even boundaries so that, for example, if I had a furnace and maybe a crafting table, I'm going to want to be able to put these down in the corners of the room and not have them float in the middle of the space, right? So I need the inside of the room to be complete whole meters. Because if I had any micro blocks on the corners here, I wouldn't be able to put down my my table. So if I grab some micro blocks here, plant that under the window, that looks nice, but now that furnace won't fit there because it's already occupied by a micro block. So unfortunately, you can't quite do that. What you can do instead is to put down your, put down your furniture that's going to take up space and then put in your wood paneling or whatever else it is you want that extends into the room. But when you're designing the room and where the walls go, you have to leave some space. Now here the doorway also is spruce, and here I've changed to a different color for this room. So over here I've got green, and over here I've got light blue. And from above, you can kind of see how this works. It's a lot like looking at the floor plan of a blueprint, in fact. So here I've got a hollow section that has bricks on one side and it's got wool on the other. Here I've got a little hollow space for the window. Here I've got a hollow which is bricks and the light blue and the dark green wool. And then there's that doorway again. Looking down on the bottom, I've used oak wood panels for the floors, which means if I were to go into my basement area here, I've got a little bit of extra headroom. I don't know about you, but I find that a 2 meter tall ceiling feels really claustrophobic, and having just that little extra bit of room makes this feel like a more reasonable space. Okay, next up, talk about staircases. So Minecraft stairs, you remember, always fill in the full meter, but they also have 3 out of the 4 kind of wedges of the meter taken up, which means if I were to make make a staircase here, I'd have 1, 2, 3, and then nothing here, but 1, 2, 3, and then nothing here, and then 1, 2, 3. So the top side looks like a nice staircase, but the bottom side looks like a very jagged, Minecrafty, blocky sort of thing. This allows you to do one step better in that you can place these pillars on their sides and have them immediately follow one another in a nice smooth progression. You can do something similar by using the posts instead, where here I've got the posts. Let me grab some posts here. So I've got one in the middle, and then I've got these guys on the corners. And that way I've got 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. So it gives you basically the same staircase, but with smaller pieces. And it's a little bit interesting to be able to see through. Here I've got the same kind of staircase built with slabs, so it's only going up half as much. Now you can actually do this in vanilla Minecraft with regular vanilla slabs, but of course you can also do it with these slabs too. So here's the same kind of idea for a staircase, but taken to a broader canvas, right? So here I'm going to walk up. I've got a little landing where we change directions and then walk up again. And you can well imagine, if this weren't a demonstration, maybe this is inside of a castle, or this is inside of some other building. But it allows you to make very narrow staircases. This takes up exactly 2 meters by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meters in order to get this staircase that rises pretty quickly to get from one level to another. Really very useful design. I use this a lot in a lot of my builds. Here's a spiral staircase model where I've got a 1 meter by 1 meter block, just regular oak wood planks in the center. And then on the sides that are full meters, I have 2 pillars. And then in the corners, I have slabs. Pillars, slabs, pillars, slabs. And that gives me also a very fast to climb spiral staircase. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to talk about is arches. Now, of course, as I said before, you can do arches just fine in vanilla Minecraft, except for the fact that each little piece has to be 1 meter wide. And with our players being about 2 meters tall, that means if you want a detailed arch, you have to make it really, really big. And if you want to make a small arch, you can't make it very detailed. Using Microblocks, each block is now 1/4, or 1/8, I guess, the size of a regular block, or 1/2 on any given side. And so with a lot less space, you can make a much more detailed model. And that's it for Microblocks. So we've talked about making saws way back at the beginning there, where you want to make yourself some stone tool rods the way you make sticks, and then you can use flint, iron, or diamond to be able to complete the center. And then you use your saw by taking your blocks and putting them either underneath to cut them in half vertically, or putting them off to the right to cut them in half horizontally. And that gives you all of these different kinds of blocks, which you can also make by slicing up one direction or another. Lots of different ways to place them down on the world, and you get your little guide when you're looking down. It'll show you where they can be placed. You can combine blocks together to make different thicknesses. You can combine blocks together in the same 1 meter in order to make all sorts of interesting patterns. And pretty much all the rest of this stuff is various ways of doing that in order to make all sorts of interesting different shapes. So if you like this video, hit like. If you want to know when the next video is ready, hit subscribe, and I will talk to you later.